Hey, welcome back again. We are continuing down the laying the foundation part of the Life Is series. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build from the last video. So this is the second video in the series. In the last video, I was looking at some big questions and how I've answered these and how these have helped me in my life. So the big question number one was, were we created or random? And I believe we were created for a purpose. And then big question number two was, who was Jesus? And I accept that it takes people a lot of time to get to where I'm at on this. But I have accepted that Jesus was the Lord. And I'm trying to move forwards from there. We also learned the Bible verse last time, so there's actually going to be three of these total, and so this was the first one. So if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus was Lord, or sorry, that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And so that was kind of the first of three. So people kind of get to that point and they're like, aren't I done? Like, pat self on back, go to heaven, I'm good, right? I'm done. So I'll set. I'll say that you're not. It's not actually the end. It's actually the beginning, right? So I've always enjoyed this one. So this is, God began a good work in you, and I am sure that he will carry it on until it is completed. And that will be on the day Christ Jesus returns. And so the idea is that if you decide that Jesus is the Lord, that is awesome. That is a huge step, but it's the beginning, right? So God began a good work in you, not God finished a good work in you and you're done now, but he began it. And so how do we move forwards from this? Also, keep in mind, we're hoping to eventually ask the third big question. We're going to keep tabling that for a little later. We'll talk about that in the third video of the series, right? So we'll come back to it. But really, before we get to that third question, we've got to look a little bit more about the ramifications of question number two. And so that's kind of understanding a little bit more about Jesus' life, things that are in the Bible. And what I've chosen to do for this series is I've chosen to pick three verses, and the goal is to memorize these three verses. So if you follow this whole series, the goal is that you'll memorize all these three verses. The top one you've hopefully already kind of got. The only thing you have to do with the top one is you have to keep practicing. You have to understand it. You have to like really cement it in there. And then I'm going to introduce you to the second and third verse. We won't go through like a worksheet for those today just because it's a little bit much to do three of them in a day. So we're just going to do one today, one tomorrow, one the next day. But I did want to introduce them because they're an important part of laying the foundation about what question two means and how you move on to question three. So the next one we're going to look at is the Luke 10:27. I'll go to the next slide on that. And it says this. I'm going to start with like the just before and the just after as well. So it says, on one occasion, an expert in the law. So an expert in the law is also called like a teacher of the law or a Pharisee. And what this means is Moses gave the law. So this is a lot of Old Testament knowledge here, right? And I think they referred to them as the scriptures. Of course, they spoke Hebrew, right? So they didn't say the word scriptures, but the scriptures or the law were well known, and there's people that studied them, and they were the leaders of the church, and they were the Pharisees and teachers of the law, and they were making a lot of mistakes, which is one of the motivating factors for Jesus to choose that time in history to come. Anyway, he stood up and he said, "Teacher," so that was a common name for Jesus, was teacher. "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And I think that question of what must I do to inherit eternal life, that's pretty succinct, right? That's pretty clear. In this version, so in Luke's version, Jesus doesn't directly answer. Jesus actually kind of turns the question back on him because he knew that he was a teacher of the law. And he says, "What's written in the law? How do you read it?" And I think this is really important too, because it kind of ties together the importance of the Old Testament, which I think is good, because otherwise, like, I would focus just on his life and I would miss out on a lot of the Old Testament. And so it's actually the teacher of the law who answers. And so he answered with a direct quote from Deuteronomy and Leviticus. He said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." So he wasn't doing anything other than quoting the things he'd memorized. He was a studied person, and he answered from the scriptures, the correct answer, right? So that was his goal. And then something really important happened. Jesus confirmed it, right? So he says, "You have answered correctly." And so with that, Jesus confirms a lot of what's written in the Old Testament, right? And so he says, "Do this and you will live." So this verse is very poetic. It kind of takes a while to like get any idea what they're really saying here. But it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. You can see I like the gestures. I had to do it there. And love your neighbor as yourself. Do this and you will live. So what I want to do is I want to kind of like break that down a little bit more, because I think this verse is actually much more instructive than what it is on the surface. Because on the surface, it's kind of like, oh, it's very beautiful. You got to love your God with like all of yourself and love your neighbor. And so that's really like what I call the short version of the Bible, right? Specifically, it's the Old Testament, because it doesn't talk about Jesus. Maybe you'd like, add in a little bit of Romans 10:9 to get a little bit more Jesus in there. But I want to break down this verse and kind of understand what these things mean. So in the Bible, sometimes it'll say heart, and that'll be the only thing it says, like you got to believe with all your heart. And then it kind of encompasses like all of these. But in this particular verse, it broke out all four. And how are they similar and how are they different? And understanding that, I think, is an important part of laying the foundation for understanding what life is. So let's just kind of look at each word. By the way, this is just the hand motions that I did. So heart, I always point at my heart. It helps me memorize it. Soul, I put my hand like over my heart, soul, and then strength, strength. And then mind, I like point at my head. So that's my short version of the Bible with hand motions, right? So that one we're going to memorize for next time. So what do these things mean? So I'm not necessarily going to do them in order. The order is heart, soul, strength, mind. But I'm going to do it in the order of mind first. And I don't mind changing the order, because if you look at Matthew, the order is different there anyway, right? So what does mind mean? So your mind is obviously your ability to figure stuff out. So you use your mind all the time, hopefully. But your mind is given to you for a reason, right? And so you're supposed to use it to figure out the day-to-day, how to do your job, how to get your kids to school and drive yourself places. But you're supposed to use it to figure out the meaning of life, right? You're supposed to use it to figure out why you're here. You're supposed to figure out what you should be doing. And it's expected that you're doing that. And it does take a while, right? It doesn't just like magically happen, but it is something that you can accomplish if you work at it. I've been trying. I'm not perfect. I feel like I'm like on my high horse here, but that's not that's not the reality. The reality is that I struggle. I make a lot of mistakes, but it's important to use your mind and understand that that's expected of you to figure things out. The next one that I'll address is strength. So strength is your ability to do it, right? So strength is your willpower. So if you use your mind and you figure out, it's like, oh, I should really do this thing, then your strength is the next step to actually physically do it in the world. So it's your self-control, it's your willpower, it's your ability to get yourself to actually do what your mind has figured out. So your mind is first, and then your strength is second. And so if you love the Lord your God with all your strength, you'll do what you know you should do, right? And so there's a lot of different things that it talks about in the Bible that kind of understand God's will. So you should serve. So you should love others and you should serve others. You should go to church, right? So I am the vine, you're the branches. If a man remains in me, and going to church and being a part of a community and having fellowship is important. So you should go to church. You should show the fruits of the Spirit. The fruits of the Spirit is from Galatians, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And the idea is that trees bear fruit. You know that it's an apple tree because there's apples on there. You know it's an orange tree because there's oranges on there. And people will know that you're choosing God's will if you show these fruit, right? So these are the fruit that people are going to look at your life and say, hey, I can see these things in their life. I think I know more about what kind of tree they are, right? And again, I'll say it's important to figure these things out, but people don't know about them unless you do them, right? So the strength is important. The physical things we do in here is important. What you think is important too, your mind, but your strength is what people see. Those two are easy to understand. They're easy to try to implement compared to the other two. But let's go ahead and get into the next two. So the next one that I'm going to address is soul. So what is soul, right? So your soul is the God-breathed eternal part of you. It's what separates you from an animal. So you are eternal. You have a soul in you. Your life doesn't end when your body dies. You keep on going. And so that's what your soul is. What are we supposed to do? Like, what is it? What do I do to acknowledge that fact? How do I love with all my soul? I don't even know what that is. Well, I mean, it means that you'll love God here and then also after you're dead. So those two things are important. But I think that the thing that you really can do is that you can show humility, right? So you can accept that you are important, right? You are important because God's important. You are here for a while, but you won't be here forever. You will be somewhere else forever, right? So hopefully you'll choose the path that I've chosen, and you'll go to heaven, and you'll be in heaven forever. And if you do things with humility, and you put God first in them, then you'll be loving God with all your soul, right? So it's not you that does something. It's not your money. It's God's, and you're representing God in the things you do, and that state of humility to let God work while you are just trying to do your part is really what your soul is all about. So I would say it's humility. It's putting God's first. It's accepting that the things you're doing are for God. Right. So that's what soul is. Told you it got harder. In Matthew, in the Beatitudes, it says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." And so the poor in spirit are the people who are humble, the people who know that they're one small part of a much bigger picture. Right. So that's what the soul is. And then your heart is your motivation. Your heart is what makes you wake up in the morning. Your heart is what makes you want to go to work and do something today, right? So what is your motivation? What is your driving factor? And you've got to love the Lord your God with all your heart. This is tricky. So it is saying that you need to have your motives in line with God's motives, with God's will. And this is harder. People think that this one's impossible, but it's not. Some people really don't want to go to church, but they force themselves to, right? That's not the goal, right? The goal is for you to realize that it's important. Your goal is to realize that you're lucky to be there. And then when you wake up, you want to go, right? And if you don't want to go, this is crazy, but that's actually a sin because it's not following God's will. Like, you get yourself up, you go, you're in the pew, but you're grumpy about it. You've sinned. And it's like, well, what should I have done? Right? Should I have not gone? It's like, well, no, but you gotta work on your heart. So as soon as you kind of get your mind around this, you'll start continuing to make changes in your life to align yourself with God's will. And that's what the heart, love the Lord your God with all your heart, really is that you want the same things. You're not like using your willpower to force yourself to do it. You want those same things. And so that's what heart is. So I think that this is what I call the super short version of the Bible for good reason, because it starts with, what must I do to inherit eternal life? It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart. So that's your motivation, your soul, that's your humility, your strength, that's actually physically doing the things, and your mind, that's the figuring things out. And then, of course, love your neighbor as yourself kind of plays into all four of them. And then do this and you will live. Because I'm a big nerd, because I'm an engineer, because I like organizing things and thinking about things, I kind of think of it as like a tree, right? So like, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Well, there's the things that you have to do towards God. And then there's the things that you have to do towards the other people that are here. The God side breaks down into heart, soul, strength, and mind. The neighbor one isn't broken down here, but I'm sure that you could break it down if you wanted. But that's like a really short version of the Bible. That's enough that you could memorize that. The next verse that we're going to be looking at, and this is just kind of like a preview, comes from Romans 12:2. So this is the third verse of the three verses I picked for the series. And I'll just read it with you. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Again, kind of very poetic language here. That by testing, you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. And so important stuff here, right? By the way, with my kids, just to like help them like understand it, I do change it. I say, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. That part I leave the same. Mind, you can see that reference back to Luke 10:27. And I tell them just to say, ask questions to figure out the will of God. And that's easier for them to kind of understand that language. And then that's good, acceptable, and perfect. And then for my kids, I also add the for you, right? So that's what I do there. I do like the original text better because testing implies that you're going through a cycle, right? So you're thinking about like a hypothesis, right? Like you're running an experiment. Maybe it's a thought experiment. You're looking at the results. You're basing it on a conclusion. You're reflecting on it. You're thinking about what test I should do next. It's much more complete than just ask questions. And so I do like the original text, but I did modify it for my kids just to make it easier to understand because it's hard, especially for young people, to kind of understand how to break down those flowery text in the Bible. Cool. So you've been listening for a long time. So what I want to do is I want to do some hands-on activities just because it's good to kind of break things up. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of bring it around to what this series is titled. So this series is titled Life is blank, right? And so parts 2, 3, and 4 are going to be 2, 3, 4, and 5 are going to be me kind of answering that question of life is blank. And I'm going to use some word. But before I tell you like what the 4 words are that I picked, I want to spend some time letting you think about what you think life is. So you're going to have to get out your papers again. So the first paper you're going to need, let me go ahead and find mine here, is looks like this on the screen. And what it is it's trying to figure out what life metaphors fit best for you. And so what I've done here is I've given you a head start in your brainstorming. So on this sheet of paper, what I want you to do is I've kind of broken it up into chunks of 4. And I want you to look at those 4 words because you can only process about 4 different words and compare them at a time. And circle any that you think are good life metaphors in your opinion, right? There is no right or wrong answer, but I want you to think through which ones are the best fits. And so like the first thing is race, trust, opportunity, or battle, right? So which of those words do you think describes life best? If there's 1 or 2 of them that you like, you can circle them, and then you can move on to the next group. If you don't like any of them, you don't have to circle any of them. And you can see that there's a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth chunk here. Don't circle too many. Your goal is to limit yourself to about, I'd say, a max of like 8 words total. And then the bottom area is words that you've picked that you think are better than these words. But I want you to pause the video, take a little bit of time, go through this brainstorming exercise, and pick words that you think life is. I'd say get at least 4 or 5, and then at most 8. So your goal is to pick like the 4 or 5 up to 8 that you like best. So pause the video and take a minute and do that exercise. All right, hopefully you did it. So I'm just trusting that you paused the video there, so that's great. And so this is the brainstorming phase to kind of come up with good words. The next thing is I want you to go a step farther and try to decide which of these words is the best in your opinion as a life is metaphor. And there's a lot of different ways to do decisions, like how do you decide on this? You could just think about it and just pick the one that you think is best. That's probably acceptable, but just to kind of get some practice behind it, we're going to use a different exercise. You could ask other people, right? Get their opinion. That's important to like value other people's opinions. We're going to do a process called a design decision matrix. If you're an engineer, you know design decision matrices very well. The idea is this. You have different options. On this screen, I've kind of listed option 1, option 2, option 3, and option 4. Those are going to be your words. So maybe you picked like battle or race. And so those are your words. And then you're going to evaluate them by different criteria. So these columns are the criteria. I've picked the criteria for you, just that's honestly try to make it easier for you. And the criteria that I've picked for you is how instructive is this word? So the idea of a life metaphor is that it should help you, right? It should be beneficial for you to think about life and to figure out how to make choices, right? So it should be instructive to you, maybe instructive to others. It should probably be insightful. Admittedly, those words are kind of similar, but it should maybe be a little non-obvious. This should be insightful. It's like, hey, that's a truth, right? So I found some truth. How accurate is it? Obviously, accuracy is important. If it's leading you astray, it's no good. And then the last one is, how complete is it? So some life metaphors cover only like very narrow pieces of life. So if you pick life as like a box of chocolate, you never know what you're going to get, right? So I mean that's very small, right? So it doesn't cover life, right? So it's not very complete. So what you do in design decision matrices is you figure out your options, and that's what you're going to have to do. It's this sheet of paper. So pick your 8 options, 4 or 5 up to 8. 8 is max because the only table I gave you only has room for 8. And then you're going to rate each one of your words, not my words, of your words, on how accurate is it, how instructive is it, how insightful is it, how complete is it. You can see I changed the order from the slides here just because I put accurate first. And then you're going to rate them from 1 to 5. 5 being good, like it does a good job. So if something is very accurate, you'd give it a 5, right? If it's not really accurate, you'd give it a 1. If something is like really complete, you'd give it a 5. If it's not very complete, you give it a 1. So always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this is optional. You can weight your criteria differently. So maybe accurate, like they're all going to be accurate, right? You know that they're all going to be accurate. So you weight that one like really low. And you can do weights. You can do like 0.1, or you can just use like 1. So you can use like 1 to 10 for the weights, for example. Or if that's getting too complex for you, just use 1 for all the weights and don't worry about it. So you'll go through and you'll fill in your options, and then you'll evaluate each one based on the criteria, and then you'll sum them up. And that'll give you the score. If you use just weights of 1, which is the easiest, you can see like option 1 here, I gave 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. So it got a score of 20, which made it rank number 1. Option 2, you can see, was not quite as instructive, but otherwise great. It got ranked number 2. Option 3 wasn't so good, right? So that was a bad idea. I shouldn't have put that one. So it was a score of 7 and a rank of 4. And then the last option was 3rd, right? And then that's if you don't want the weights. If you want to do the weights, all you do is you just take your score, you multiply it by the weight. And so like here, this has a weight of 4. So 5 times 4 is 20. This has a weight of 1. 1 times 5 is 5. 3 times 5 is 15. 2 times 5 is 10. And then you actually take that parenthesis number and add those up to make the score. That's just if you're a nerdy person like me and you want to weight your criteria differently. So this is going to take you a little bit to do, and I'm going to end the video with this. But I want you to go through and rate them all, or pick your words, rate them all, score them all, and rank them. And at that point, you should come up with what you consider are pretty good life metaphors. So you would say life is this, life is that, life is that. And so the goal is for you to take a minute and for you to think about it. And I want you to also think about, what do you think I picked, right? So we're going to end this video here, and then we're going to pick up the next video with what are the words that I picked, and we're also going to answer that big question number 3, or ask that big question number 3 at least. And so looking forward to continuing the discussion with you. Get this thing filled out, pick your words. There is no wrong answer. I'm not going to catch you wrong if you pick something different from me, but think it over and spend time with your mind to figure out what life is. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.